Hi, I'm Monica Packer, and you're listening to About Progress, where we are about progress made practical. During the winter holiday break, I took a break from a few habits. It was mostly a shift, like I didn't have to wake up at the same early hour or exercise in the same way because my kids were getting up later. But other habits totally went on the back burner. I simply needed a break from them, like meal planning, day planning, some personal journaling. And that was all well and good. We have ebbs and flows with our habits. If they're there to support us, then it's okay if we don't do them the same way day in and day out. But in a span of just 24 hours, I forgot about two important things. One, a church activity for one of my kids who was really excited to attend. And then, second, a piano lesson. And both of these things were totally on my online calendar on my iPhone, but they weren't on my day planner because I wasn't day planning. Forgetting about those two events reminded me why I day plan. When we think of day planning, I think a lot of us envision someone who is super regimented and disciplined and type A. I am none of those things, and yet I love to day plan. I day plan not because I am naturally good at or even like the process. I day plan because I appreciate the results. I haven't always been a day planner. I've had a volatile relationship with day planning in the past, from when I was an overachieving perfectionist who was time blocking every second of my time, lived and died by my planner, to being someone who didn't plan at all for years and years. Day planning was a habit I gradually picked up over the last few years, and while I took a break from it in 2023, I reprioritized it in 2024 after I was out of my survival year of having a newborn. And how did I know that day planning needed to be one of the top on my list to bring back? Well, my brain was always spinning. I was dropping balls right and left. I constantly felt both overwhelmed and directionless. It was time. If you're feeling it's time for you too to consider day planning, this episode is for you. I interviewed Jess Massey, who has been on the show before to talk about peaceful productivity. But today we are talking about how to shift day planning from being something that is panic-led to more intentional and peaceful-driven. In it, we talk about her own history with planning and practical ways that you can take on day planning in ways that work for you. There's going to be levels of day planning. There's so many different forms of day planning, regardless of where you lie in any of that. She has some good practical takeaways that I believe apply to anyone in any season and to any degree in which they wish to day plan or have the capacity to do so. So if you're nervous about an episode on day planning, don't be. Jess Massey is the host of the Hustle Sanely podcast, a planner creator and founder of the community-centered productivity brand Hustle Sanely. She uses her framework, the Hustle Sanely planning system, to teach ambitious women how to live peacefully productive lives by creating harmony between their work, well-being, and relationships, no matter what season they're in. That interview is coming up after a quick break for our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Air Doctor. Americans take about 20,000 breaths a day and spend an average of 90% of their time indoors. The indoor air that we breathe can be up to 100 times more polluted than outdoor air, according to the EPA. Indoor air pollutants can cause respiratory symptoms like sneezing, congestion, scratchy throat, and even more serious health problems. So what's the solution? Air Doctor, an award-winning purifier that eliminates 99.99% of dangerous contaminants like allergens, viruses, smoke, gases, mold spores, and more. Air Doctor was voted Best Air Purifier by Newsweek, so it's no surprise that 98% of Air Doctor customers agree their home's air feels safer, cleaner, and healthier. And we are in that boat. We live in the Salt Lake Valley, which is famous for many good things, but infamous for its smog because we basically live in a giant bowl. A couple weeks back, we had one of those bad air quality weeks where people were not supposed to go outside much at all. And I noticed that my Air Doctor was not only working well and how clean the air felt inside our house, it was also working overtime and automatically too. Unlike other air purifiers, Air Doctor captures invisible particles 100 times smaller than standard HEPA filters. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code MONICA to get up to $300 off today. AirDoctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, plus a 3-year warranty, and $84 value free. Get this exclusive podcast-only offer now at airdoctorpro.com. That's AIRDOCTORPRO.com using promo code MONICA. One of the long-standing things that has connected us as a community is the Do Something list. The first one I ever made way back in 2016 totally changed my life and actually led to this podcast. And I have heard from hundreds of women from the About Progress community that the Do Something list has changed their lives too. What is it? Well, it's a way for you to prioritize your own fulfillment, to explore who you are, and all outside the pressures of goals and resolutions. If you're ready to have more hobbies, to have more creativity, to have more fun or rest or connection this year, whatever it is, make sure you make your own Do Something list. I am hosting a free workshop on this very soon, mid-January, and you can sign up at aboutprogress.com/DSL2025. It's the only free workshop I will host in 2025. And if you missed the sign up date, that's okay. Go to aboutprogress.com/DSL and I will make sure I have a free training for you, including the replay from that workshop. But come to the workshop with me if you can, and that way you can learn more about the DSL and create one with me and the other women who are joining us from our community. Again, to join the free workshop, go to aboutprogress.com/DSL2025. Jess Massey, welcome back to About Progress.
I am so excited to be here again. Thank you, Monica, for inviting me back. What an honor.
I love learning from you. I also feel like everyone who follows you online probably thinks, oh, you feel like a friend, and that's who you are. You're like the internet's friend. And you're also the internet's like, hey, let's get you to be more productive without losing your mind, friend.
Yes. That is my goal. So I appreciate you saying that. I always, when I first started Hustle Sanely, you know, on Instagram, how like next to your name, you can put like your title or, you know, whatever. Yeah. Mine says Jess Massey Hustle Sanely now. But before Hustle Sanely was the name of my business, it was Jess Massey, your online BFF. So I appreciate that.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I didn't even know that. So like, there you go. Now you just got proof that you're doing your job really, really well. I love it when it happens. Well, we're going to be talking about day planning today. Last time we talked about specific habits to form that help you be productive in ways that you are peacefully productive or you're not sacrificing your mental health for. But today I wanted to dive into day planning, which actually is not my favorite topic. But I'm going to be honest.
I love the honesty. I do.
It's not my favorite topic, but I have to tell you, it is so helpful. It is so supportive. So while it's not my favorite thing, it's one of my favorite results about all the habits, that I have. So we're going to be talking to people who were like me, but maybe they haven't gotten into the actual habit yet of being like, oh, you know, it just feels like too much. I don't want to do it, but I know I need to. I know it's time. So let's start with your own history of day planning and if that's been just part of your personality or not.
I love this question because it took me back mentally when I was looking over it. I'm an eldest daughter. I am very, very type A. Like, I'm pretty sure that I came out of the womb ready to take control and plan my little heart out. Yeah. Growing up, I planned from a place of panic, whereas now I plan from a place of peace. So I used to plan every little detail, like down to a T. Like it was definitely from a place of control and panic. And I would freak out internally, externally, like all of it. If everything didn't go just like perfectly according to my plan, I would beat myself up. I would push myself so far past my limits in the name of getting my 1.5 mile long to-do list done every single day. Now, I know that our schedules and routines are tools, not chains. That's something that I say all the time. And I plan so that I can steward my time well. So my mindset has really shifted when it comes to day planning. I plan now so that I can be intentional with my time, so that I can show up for my days in a way that aligns with my priorities. So I've always been a planner, but my heart posture toward planning has gone from an unhealthy place to a healthy place, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's actually helping me understand why I said it's not my favorite topic. And it's because I had such a panic filled relationship with planning in the past, especially when I was an aspiring perfectionist. And just like you said, like planning to the minute detail, and then your whole day gets thrown off if you don't get one thing right. And then just the level of expectation was so unrealistic. So let's just tell people that's not this.
Absolutely not.
That's not this. But how would someone know if it is time to consider day planning? Like, what are some signs that, oh, maybe I should revisit this topic, and this habit, even though I thought it wasn't for me?
I think when I've worked with clients and students, I think the number one sign is you go to bed feeling unaccomplished and kind of bummed out and stressed out about how that day went. And then you're also going to bed and waking up anxious about the day ahead. So that's like the number one sign, is if you feel like you're just in this kind of unescapable, is that a word? I don't know. We're going to go with it.
Sure.
Unescapable cycle of like going to bed stressed and waking up anxious just about the day behind you and the day ahead. Like you can't find any peace, whether it's how the day went or how the day is going to go.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking when I picked up day planning again in 2024, I basically put it on the back burner after I had my baby in 2023, which I know you and I had babies really close together. That was a back burner habit, but I knew I had to bring it back to the foreground when I was feeling those things. And also when I was dropping major balls, like forgetting piano lessons or major things in my life.
Right.
And just feeling kind of that brain on constant running mode. Like I couldn't get it to stop.
Right.
So it helps. It helps that mental load piece. So with this, why does it help so much? I mean, you talked about that posture, your heart posture that you changed. Why does day planning even matter? And why should people consider to have this in their lives?
I feel like I kind of alluded to it a little bit already, but I truly believe, and I've seen it in myself and in others, when we plan our days, we get to decide what matters and how we're going to show up for what matters to us. Planning your days with intention, I feel like it's taking ownership of your life, right? It means you're not watching from the sidelines. You're a player in the game, right? And so when I think of day planning, and I think I've heard you say this before too, day planning to me, it truly is an investment in yourself, because a little bit of time to plan up front saves you so much brain power and squandered time the next day. When we don't plan and we go into the day just kind of, I say, flying by the seat of our pants, it can feel like life is happening to us instead of for us. Like we're kind of running around putting out fires all day, but we don't really have anything to show for it at the end of the day other than feeling spread too thin, feeling plagued by a never-ending to-do list. When we don't plan our days, we just don't have a metric to look at to help us say, okay, cool, today went well. Like I feel good about today. At the end of the day, instead, we just constantly feel like we didn't do enough. We didn't measure up. And like I said earlier, we go to bed already stressed out about how much we have to do tomorrow because we didn't get it done today.
So what does wise day planning look like? And I say that because you talked about, we're recovering perfectionists in this community. So we talk about the spectrum of perfectionism, the all or nothing, and how they're often feeling the same. Like when you plan too much, you can feel really scattered. And when you don't plan at all, you can feel really scattered. But sometimes we don't do something because we think there's only one kind of way to do something, like that minute, panicked kind of way. So what does wise day planning look like?
To me, wise day planning involves a lot of margin and a lot of flexibility. So, okay, I'm a productivity coach, and I will be the first person to tell you the chances of your day ever going like perfectly according to plan, like that you have in your little planner or on your little notepad or on your Google Calendar, whatever you choose to use to plan, the chances of your day going according to that ever, very slim. I won't say impossible because nothing is impossible, but very, very slim, right? But having that plan in place as a guide for your day is going to give you just so much more peace because you're not in react mode all day. and you're not going to have that decision-making fatigue. And I feel like wise day planning means that you're giving yourself the margin to be flexible because life happens, right? No matter who you are, you have different roles that you're responsible for in your life, right? And so the key to not feeling like you're kind of running on that hamster wheel and how to make day planning support you well is to do it in a way that you can pivot within your days.
And this is why I love talking to you, because even now, as I put this back in my life, I still have that part of me that thinks, oh, day planning is like, very, very specific and very detailed and like no margin. And it's the exact opposite. It's building in the margin. It's creating the ability to be flexible. Let's talk more about the practical ways they can do how. We're going to talk maybe about like mediums they can use in a bit.
Totally.
But let's start with like, no matter what you use, here is what peaceful, mindful day planning looks like.
Yeah. So it sounds kind of silly when you say it out loud, but to me, in order to plan your day well, you have to have a plan to plan. Okay. So it's so daunting to just sit down and stare at whatever medium you're using and try to plan if it's not something that you're used to doing, if it's not a habit that's already woven into your life, right? Like, even if you've planned in the past, if your season of life is different, if the roles that you're showing up for are different, the way that you're going to have to plan is going to look different. So I think you have to go into planning with a plan, okay? And so when I create a plan, my first step is always to set the intention, because I learned this about myself in therapy. I need to know why I'm doing something or I'm not going to want to do it. That's what creates motivation in me, is knowing why something matters, why I'm showing up to do it. And so to me, I teach what's called the Hustle Sanely planning system to my students in my online community. And part of that is having a daily planning meeting. And so the purpose of a daily planning meeting is to prep for the day so that you can take ownership of your time and energy so that you can show up with intention. So that's the first thing. Like, know why you're doing it. Like, what does this matter? Why am I showing up to spend like 5, 10, 15 minutes prepping for the next day? So that's why. That's my why. But you have to come up with your own why, okay?
So quick question on that, Jess. Is this like an overarching why for planning in general, or is it every day when you plan, you're like, what's my intention for planning today?
Usually for me, it's just like my overarching, like this is why I do it. And then some of my action steps, because I'm a list girly. Like, I need a plan to follow. I need a framework because I'm a mom. I'm a business owner. I'm a wife. Like, I don't have a lot of spare brain power, right? So I like to be able to take a framework and kind of plug myself into it and let it do the work for me. So I'm going to share with you, if you're okay with that, like the framework that I use to plan my days. Okay, great.
That was my next one. What's that framework?
Perfect. So it's a 5-step framework. And again, it might sound daunting if you've never done it before, but I would encourage your listeners to just listen with an open mind and open heart. Don't go into it thinking that you have to start doing all of these things tomorrow, or that you have to do them all perfect the first time you try it, right? This is just like kind of a launch pad, right? Something for you to get yourself going. So the action steps that I follow, step number 1, make note of any time-bound tasks. So you mentioned, Monica, that things are slipping through the cracks, like piano lessons. So I'm assuming things like that, they have a time attached to them that we're not necessarily in control of. Like, yes, we set the appointment, but like, it is what it is, kind of, right? Like, we need to be somewhere at a certain time. We're expected to be there. So that's always my first step that I recommend people do, is make note of any time-bound tasks, things that aren't super flexible and that you're like, okay, we've got to be at XYZ place at XYZ time. So make a note of those first. And then my second step is to check in with yourself to assess your energy. So this kind of gets into my intention setting on a daily basis. So, and it's more so kind of tuning into like, okay, how am I feeling? What's going on in my life? And how can I make my plan for either today or tomorrow, depending on when you do your day planning, support me where I'm at? So I am currently walking through a season of pretty heavy grief. And so the way that I've planned out my days the past couple of weeks has looked vastly different because I've had to check in with myself and set the expectation of, okay, this is where I'm at. What is realistic? What actually needs to be done? And what can I let go of in this season? So that's why step 2, it sounds fluffy and it sounds, and I'm putting this in air quotes, extra, like, oh, I don't really need to do that step. But doing that step, checking in with yourself to assess your own energy, that's where we kind of get out of that mindset of perfectionism and feeling like every day has to look the same. Every day your to-do list has to be slammed. Your calendar has to be kind of like bursting at the seams. So that's step 2. Just check in with yourself to assess your energy. And it's truly as simple as asking, okay, what's going on in my life? How am I feeling? Is there anything I can let go of that I just don't have the capacity for tomorrow or today, depending on when you're doing it? So that's step 2. Step 3, and this one is pretty specific to hustling sanely, is determine and schedule your Hustle Sanely 5 habits. So we talked about this on the last episode that I was on with you, and Hustle Sanely 5, it's just a daily routine that I do and that I teach to help people get the most important things done every day while prioritizing their mental health and the important relationships in their life. If you want to recap, I'm happy to like read over the 5 steps really quick, just so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, definitely share them again. We'll definitely link to the old episode, but it would be helpful to get a refresher.
Okay, perfect.
So, I know what they are, but that's because I'm like part of your community, so.
Okay, so the Hustle Sanely 5 habits, we also call it HS5, is the first one is complete your focus 3. So that one is the only one that people might be like, huh, what is that? So your focus 3, those are your 3 most important tasks to get done that day. So whether it's a deadline that needs to be met for work, whether it's helping your kid with a project that's due later that week, it's kind of things that like you don't have a lot of wiggle room on. You're like, okay, this has got to be a priority today. So that is the first one, is complete your focus 3. Second habit is move for 30 minutes. So I say move instead of exercise because this can look like whatever movement feels good for you. Like you that's up to you. Okay. So move for 30 minutes. Number 3 is tidy for 15 minutes. So I'm talking about your physical space here. The 4th one is say or do one kind thing for yourself. And the 5th one kind of goes along with that one. And that is say or do one kind thing for someone else. So that is my 3rd action step in my day planning routine, is determine and schedule your Hustle Sanely 5 habits. So the 4th step after that kind of piggybacks off of it. So the 4th step is make a note of any other tasks that you'd like to complete once your focus 3 tasks are done. And I think it is so crucial. I don't care what type of planner or system or anything. If you're using a blank piece of paper, it does not matter. I think there is so much power in prioritization, but like actually setting aside the most important tasks in a different area on your task list, whether it's just creating a different heading, whether it is highlighting them in a different color. I just think our brains are so visual, right? And so I think it makes our to-do list so much less overwhelming. If you look at it and you're like, okay, these are the top 3 right here. And then all the rest of the stuff, this is if the top 3 get done, right? It just, for me, that was the biggest mental, yeah, exactly. And that was the biggest mental shift when I started going from like panic planning to peaceful planning, was knowing that like, it's okay if everything on my to-do list doesn't get done for the day, as long as the things that absolutely need to get done. Like everything else, like you said, it's like, yay, good. I love the extra sprinkles on top, but like life is going to go on if these things don't get done today. So that's step number 4, is make a note of any other tasks that you'd like to complete once those focus 3 tasks are done. And then the last action step for day planning is create your schedule using what I like to call energy aligned time blocking when possible. And this, it's a lot of words, but it's basically just saying create a schedule that feels good for you and makes sense for how you operate. So if you're a night owl, do your creative work at night, right? Like if you're a morning person like me, if I tried to do any work at nighttime, like creative work, it would take me 3 times as long. I would have to overcome so much internal resistance because I am a sleepyhead at night. I am a morning person. I have my mental clarity, my mental energy in the morning. So I try to create my schedule in a way where those kinds of tasks are in the morning. So that's what I mean when I say energy aligned time blocking. Make your schedule make sense for how you're wired. I feel like so often we see, especially on like social media, the, productivity gurus, they're saying like, okay, you have to wake up at 5 a.m. You have to do like your most important work in the morning, like this, that, and the other. And if you're a morning person and that works for you, great, amazing, like ride with that. But what if you're an evening person? What if you're a night owl? Like that doesn't work for you. So instead of just kind of trying to plug yourself into something that doesn't make sense for how you're wired, lean into how you're wired and create your schedule accordingly where you can. I know some of us, we don't get to set our work hours. We don't get to bring our kid to piano lessons at 10 p.m. if that works best for us. You know what I mean? So when you can, just make your schedule work for you. So those are the 5 steps that I follow to plan my day. And like I said, I know that it can sound a little bit daunting or overwhelming if you've never done it. But now, as somebody who's been a day planner my entire life, someone who uses this system, this takes me 5 minutes a day. I typically do it the evening before, and then I kind of hammer in the morning of. Like, I'm like, okay, let me check in, see if anything shifted, anything changed, if I feel different, if something popped up in life. So I think it might take a little bit longer at first, but just know that with practice, you'll get quicker at it and it won't feel as daunting. And again, we talked about this earlier, it's an investment in yourself, right? So investments take a little bit more work up front to pay off in the long run.
This episode is sponsored by Element. If you struggle with headaches, cramps, fatigue, brain fog, or general weakness, did you know that it could be due to you having an electrolyte deficiency or imbalance? Electrolytes are charged minerals that aid in hydration to our very cells, which are very important. And busy women often need help with hydration, and I'm no different. This is why I adore, and I mean adore, our sponsor, Element, spelled LMNT. Element is a zero-sugar electrolyte drink mix that helps anyone stay hydrated, without the dodgy ingredients and artificial colors found in popular electrolyte and sports drinks. I put 1 stick of Element into my giant tumbler every morning before I do my workout. And not only have I grown to love its salty taste, I love all the flavors I've tried. My very favorite have to be raspberry and the chocolate caramel and maybe the citrus and the watermelon. Okay, I clearly love them all. I have also been loving having fewer headaches and less leg cramps waking me up at night. Our podcast manager, Taylor, is a big fan too and has been for some time, as she has used Element to aid her hydration as a workout instructor long before they became a sponsor. Element is for everyone, from Navy SEALs to Olympians to moms like me. Get your free Element sample pack with any purchase at drinkelement.com/progress. Also try the new Element Sparkling, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. I love this water too, and it's the perfect pickup in the late afternoon or early evening. If you don't like what you order, Element will refund your order, no questions asked. Again, get your free Element sample pack with any purchase at drinkelement.com/progress. Now that the holidays are ending, I bet you thought your list would get a lot less intense, but I'm sure it's not. With so much going on all day, every day, I want you to think about where you are on your own list. It is so hard to prioritize ourselves, but that's what we need to do so that we can show up as ourselves to our responsibilities. If you find yourself showing up as a less than ideal version of you as you are starting this new year, I want you to think about how you could put yourself on your own list. And here's one way you can do that. Get on the wait list for my first Sticky Habit Intensive for 2025. We are starting mid-February. The intensive is my 21-day live course, community, and challenge that helps busy women form habits that stick, the kind of self-care habits that make women feel more like themselves. Past participants have prioritized feeding themselves lunch, time to work on family history, morning workouts, evening reading sessions, meal planning, and so much more. I am betting any to all of those things sound good right now. So get on the waitlist for the next Sticky Habit Intensive as spots are capped, and the waitlist not only gets first dibs to join before the general public, but they get a decent discount to boot. You can do so by clicking on the link in the show notes or going to aboutprogress.com/intensive. I don't plan to host intensive very many times this year, so get on your list by getting on mine and go to aboutprogress.com/intensive. Yeah, but that payoff is there. And that goes back to what the intention is behind this habit in the first place, which I think can also guide the how in terms of how people do it. So if you're at the beginning of this, I think you can, take one piece of this framework that's going to help you even get into a habit of day planning and then gradually add on the rest of the steps. I want to talk about baseline in just a moment, like a baseline version, but I do want to just, as you were speaking, I was imagining like this visual in my mind, since we are visual people, but since this is a podcast, I have to like paint the visual.
Right.
I was thinking like the way we used to look at planning was more like bars, like very like iron metal bars. Like, this is the way we do things. And even down to like how people would do their framework. Like, it's about getting as much done as you possibly can every day. And instead, what I see your framework as is more of like a net. So it's there to support you, but there's flexibility there, both seasonally and day by day, to match your season, to match your preferences, to match what you even want to do or not do that day. And you spoke to your season of grief. Your grandmother died recently, which we're so sorry about.
Thank you.
And I am so appreciative of how you showed that flexibility for yourself and also the structure. So that's what we're looking at. This is a net. This is a net.
Absolutely. That is such a beautiful visual, and it just makes so much sense. And I know that you sharing that just had light bulbs going off in people's heads, because I've never heard that before. And so a light bulb was going off in my head. So I love that.
Well, feel free to use it when you share more about it in the future, because that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
So you know what baselines are, because I've been able to talk to your community about habits.
Yes.
If there's a good baseline way for someone to start, what do you think that would be? And I know that's still going to be so individual for so many people, very subjective, but in general, where would you say, like, if this is all you can do, not just for a day, but even for a week, this is what I would recommend?
I think, and of course I'm biased, using Hustle Sanely 5. So planning out your Hustle Sanely 5 for that day or the next day. I will tell you, in my season of grief, walking through this with my grandmother, it's been a very strange season, because she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in mid-October, and she passed away at the tail end of November. So everything happened very quickly. And I'm in my full season at work. It happened in the middle of Black Friday. I have a physical product that we sell. So it's like, this is the time that I'm supposed to be like leaning into work. And so by using Hustle Sanely 5 to plan each day, I was able to get the essentials done while still honoring the season that I'm in, which is grief, and making sure that I'm moving my body in a way that feels good every day. My workouts looked very different than they did pre-grief season, if that makes sense. My work to-do list, they shrank an incredible amount over the last month and a half. How I showed up for the people in my life, like saying or doing one kind thing for someone else, a lot of that was time spent at the hospital with my grandmother. So I think using Hustle Sanely 5, it meets you where you're at. It doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter what season you're in. I clung to Hustle Sanely 5 when I was postpartum too. So that's why I really love Hustle Sanely 5, is because it really does meet you where you're at. And it's kind of an all-encompassing routine that will hit the basics that you need to hit to protect your well-being on a daily basis. So I think if any of this, you're going to just, grab onto one step and kind of try it out, I would say to plan out your HS5 for that day or the following day, depending on when you're doing it. And if that feels too daunting, if you're just like, I'm not even there yet, like planning 5 things, like that feels like a lot, I would say just start with step 1. Like, a lot of people feel like things are falling through the cracks. So start making a note of your time-bound tasks the day before or the morning of. And then maybe once that becomes like, okay, this feels good, this doesn't feel like I'm having a grind to get through that, then maybe add in your focus 3. So I think that would be a great starting point. If you've never planned, you just feel like you're like, this is brand new to me, I want to start, but I want it to be sustainable. I would say make note of your time-bound tasks and then choose the 3 tasks that are the most important for you to get done that day.
fantastic. Thanks for giving us
Yeah,
two options there.
absolutely.
Baselines, we talk about in our community how baselines are for your worst of day, and you've been living that out, like your
Yeah.
literal worst of days.
Yes.
And oftentimes that's proverbial, like it isn't meant to be literal. And in this case, it has been
Yeah.
for you. So it's nice to hear not what you've been through, but how you've been able to support yourself,
Yeah.
even on your worst of days, with the way that you've taken care of yourself via planning.
Yeah.
So you talked about focus 3, and I just want to ask a quick question about that to
Yeah.
clarify for people who are still in that pendulum swing of thinking like focus 3, that means like they may get stuck in the weeds a bit. They may put like 3 huge tasks that are impossible to do for a day, or
Yeah.
they may think like, well, do I need to empty the dishwasher under way focus 3? It's easy to get stuck in the weeds there with the both minute tasks or the bigger tasks, like over
Totally.
planning. So just any suggestions you have for that focus 3 in particular as they're
Yeah, I
looking at
think
their days?
it's going to depend on what season you're in. So
Yeah.
the season that I'm in with grief, things like unload the dishwasher might be on my focus 3, right? Like if I'm operating at my normal capacity, something like that wouldn't be on my focus 3. Like
It's just something you do.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like
yeah.
I personally teach not to put habits on your focus 3 because they're habits. You're going to likely do them without having to think about it anyway. Focus 3 is more of a tool to hold you accountable to get things done that either have a looming deadline or things that are going to move you forward in the direction of a goal that you're working toward. And I'll give you an example. So I just finished, it's so wild to talk about. So I own a planner company, as you know, and I actually just wrapped up our 2026 designs and sent them off, which I'm like, we're not even in 2025 yet.
Yeah.
It's a wild time when you own a planner company. Don't ever ask me what year it is because I can't tell you.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah. So I just sent off our 2026 designs. And so I would never in my wildest dreams put on my focus 3, do 2026 designs, because that is massive. That is a huge task. So instead, complete the 2026 designs the way that I teach it in the Hustle Sanely planning system. That would be my monthly focus goal. And from my monthly focus goal, I would then break it down into 3 big action steps. And then I would break those 3 big action steps into what we call nitty-gritty action steps. So I would be using nitty-gritty action steps as my daily focus 3. So an example would be instead of like on my focus 3 saying 2026 designs, like do the 2026 designs, it would say write out all of the 2026 holidays. Might be one of my focus 3 tasks for a day. Does that make better sense?
Oh, it totally does.
Okay.
I'm thinking about this even for my son's room that I've been needing to redecorate all year. I keep saying like boys' room, but until I finally was like, pick out the paint color.
Perfect
Go
example.
Get the paint for another one. Like paint the room was a bigger task, but I did it. And now it's like find a dresser. So
perfect
example. Okay, great
Yeah.
examples there. So the way we've been talking about this, I think, is for newbies, because we've been talking about day planning, but you just mentioned, your quarterly, your monthly, your weekly kind of planning too. So this is what I'm going to say. That is so helpful. And that's like the next kind of step. But that is what will make your day planning easier too.
Right.
So where I think you guide people to start, and how I learned to start this both years ago when I finally picked up day planning, and even just this past year as I picked up day planning again, is just to start with the day. And then gradually you can pick up the weekly version of the planning and the monthly and the quarterly. I'm working on the quarterly right now. That's what I'm trying to work on better, doing those kinds of things. So still, don't get too overwhelmed. But yeah, that's the ideal we're shooting towards.
Yes. And like you said, I did not start out, planning my entire year. Now I'm at the point where I do my yearly planning in November just because that's what feels good for me.
Yeah.
And so I sit down and I plan out like my business for the following year, like my life goals for the following year. And now it doesn't feel daunting. It feels supportive. But I had to build up to that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that it's not just something that you should feel like you're, coming out of the gate, ready to plan your year every single quarter, every single month, every single week, every single day. Like, don't let yourself go there mentally until you're ready to go there mentally. And that's what I always remind the women in my community. You're in the driver's seat. You're the leading lady of your life. Like, you're the boss of these tools. They're not the boss of you. You get to decide how they're going to support you. They're not there to stress you out.
Beautiful. So this is where we could have another hour-long discussion about different like mediums. Like, how do you do virtual, or like, do you do Google Calendar or Apple Calendar, and do you do like I'm thinking of all the other productivity apps that I have totally lost because I don't use them.
ClickUp, Asana, like all the things. Yeah.
All of those things.
Mhm.
Okay, we're not going to go there because I just think it's too much. And this is where it's like, start where you're at.
Yeah.
But if we're going to talk about paper,
Mhm.
okay, and I personally use my e-calendar, like my Apple Calendar, for appointments,
Yep.
and then I still write everything out on my planner. That
Mhm.
helps. Let's talk about your planner specifically, okay?
Yeah.
Because I bought this with my own money, just so everybody knows, and I'm already planning. This is going to air in 2025, but I'm already planning my 2025, which is a big good thing for me to be moving back up towards the ideal. And I'm loving it. So I want to talk more about what specifically you think people would find in your planner, the Peacefully Productive Planner. What could they find there?
I think the biggest feedback that I get from users of the planner is that it's not just a planner, it's a lifestyle, and it helps people. I think because what sets the Peacefully Productive Planner apart is the fact that Hustle Sanely 5, that kind of daily routine that I mentioned earlier, it's woven throughout the planner in a way that makes it seamless for you to plan that out each day without using a lot of brain power. And so I think that's the biggest set apart in our planners. And the way that I created our planners, I was just sharing this on my Instagram stories earlier this morning because I use our planners too. Surprise, right?
Yeah.
And it's just in the season that I'm in, the planner has been so supportive because I feel like a lot of people are looking for a lot of space for long to-do lists and, just jam-packing their days. Our planner isn't set up in a way that allows you to plan that way. It's set up in a way that kind of kindly pushes you to prioritize and to make decisions before you start just like writing these mile-long to-do lists.
Yeah.
And so that is what I love so much about our planners is that they lovingly prompt you to learn the skill of prioritization. Of course, there's a spot for like a weekly to-do list for like if you're like, I don't know what day this needs to be done. I just know that it needs to be done. Like there's a spot for that. There's a little blank box for each day, and some people like to use that space for to-do lists, which is totally fine. But that's what I love so much about our planners is that they're set up so that you can easily plan out HS5 every day so that you're showing up for your life in a well-rounded way that prioritizes you as a person and not you as a productive machine. And it just, like I said, it really teaches you to kind of sharpen that skill of prioritization.
That's what I love about it too. It feels both more structured, but in a way that's also doable.
Yeah.
But also forces me to actually be realistic
Yes.
and choose, which is really important. Now, you mentioned planners, and that's because there's two layouts.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I love the weekly layout. That means you get one planner for the whole year, and each, like when you open it, the spread is your week.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Other people like, what's the other version? I don't know the name. It's how to describe it.
Yeah, we call it a quarterly planner. So the one that you described, the weekly, that's the one I use as well. And that is our dated planner. So like you said, you buy one, you're set for the whole year. And then we have our quarterly, that's still called the Peacefully Productive Planner, but it's just like the quarterly versus the weekly. The quarterly, it's undated. So you can start it and stop it whenever you want. And it's the way that they're set up, it's 3 months worth of planning space, but it's more detailed. So you have a monthly spread, you have a weekly spread, and then you have a daily spread. So that way, if you're in
when
a
you
season,
open it, the whole spread is just, or that page is that day.
That day, yep. Mm-hmm. But there is a weekly spread as well for each week. So it's just if you're in a fuller season of life, maybe every single day just looks so incredibly different. Maybe you're wedding planning or you're planning for, a big move or something. That's when a lot of people chime in and say that they're really kind of clinging to that quarterly planner is if they just have like a to-do list that is a little bit longer each day because it's made up of a lot of little things. And so they just need that space to kind of get it out of their brain. That's when the quarterly planner would come into, I feel like, good use. But we also have the daily planning notepad. So I
Yeah.
personally keep a daily planning notepad handy for if I'm working on a big project for work and I just feel like I need a little bit more space to like brain dump and organize my day. I don't use it super often because the way that I have my life and my business kind of structured, I'm able to like do my weekly and daily planning kind of just more like bird's eye view, and I don't really get in the weeds with list making and things like that on paper anymore. But that's the point of having the two different kinds, just so that they can meet you where you're at, whether it's a different season of life that you're in, or maybe you're just a different style of planner than the weekly planner has to offer, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I've jumped around with so many planners over the years, and I've had a lot of online friends who've had great planners, and I've
Yeah.
really, really loved this. And I personally have the weekly, but I can see, and you don't need both, just so people know.
Yeah. No.
One or the other,
Yeah.
quarterly or the weekly layout.
Hmm.
But I really love it. I've also become an affiliate, so I will put my affiliate link in the show notes. Jess, this has been fantastic. We always end with the final question, but before we do that, where should people go if they want to learn more from you?
Everything that I do on the internet is at jessicamassey.com. And if you're a visual person, you like a concrete example, I hang out on Instagram stories Monday through Saturday, and I do my best to kind of showcase my daily HS5 in action, just so that people can see like what I'm saying, like actually lived out in like
Yeah.
a day-to-day life. And so my Instagram handle is at Jess M. Massey.
Wonderful. And that's what you've changed so much about how I'm showing up to my own work, because I've realized, I told you this in the message, I was teaching and not showing, and showing is so much better.
Yes.
So
Yes.
thank you for inspiring that shift for me too. And for all that you are doing with Hustle Sanely. It's really beautiful. We'll link to your podcast as well.
Awesome.
So the final question is, we've learned a lot today. We talked a lot. If there was only one thing they could do to get started today, what would that be?
I would say plan tomorrow.
Hmm.
Plan out Hustle Sanely 5 for tomorrow. Or if you're like, that's just too much for me, plan out tomorrow. Write down what appointments and things you have, like your time-bound tasks, and your 3 most important tasks that you want to get done tomorrow, and see how that feels. See how you
Yeah.
feel at the end of tomorrow, if it feels supportive. And I just think that doing those 2 things, I don't think that they will be too daunting for anyone. And I feel like they will just meet people where they're at and make them feel like they're investing in themselves, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. We'll make sure we put that on our progress pointers for the week for everyone who's on the newsletter. So, Jess, thank you again. It's been such a joy to be able to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much, Monica. I always love chatting with you. And it's even more fun when we get to do it with your community.
Yeah. Yeah. I know they love you. I actually got quite a few messages after. I hope this episode gave you the hug and kick in the pants you need to grow. I'll now share the progress pointers. These are the notes I wrote so you don't have to. And those on my newsletter get them in a graphic form each week. You can sign up at aboutprogress.com/newsletter. Number 1, day planning is a good habit to consider if you go to bed feeling stressed, but unaccomplished. You wake up feeling overwhelmed, but directionless. You find yourself forgetting about major things and dropping balls right and left. Or your mind is constantly running on anxious fumes. Number 2, day planning is more about creating support, intention, and margin for flexibility than it is about following a regimented routine that keeps you tethered to it. This sentiment should also be applied to how you choose to day plan. Number 3, to get back into day planning or start it for the first time, begin with your overall intention. Why does this habit matter to you? Number 4, a framework to gradually follow as you pick up day planning includes: make note of time-bound tasks. Check in with yourself to assess your energy. Determine and schedule your Hustle Sanely 5 habits. I'll share the HS5 to follow. Make a note of other tasks you'd like to complete if your Focus 3 are done, and create your schedule using energy-aligned time blocking where possible. And number 5, HS5, the Hustle Sanely 5. They are: complete your Focus 3, your 3 most important to-dos, move for 30 minutes, tidy for 15 minutes, say or do one kind thing for yourself, and say or do one kind thing for someone else. Your Do Something challenge this week is to plan out tomorrow. What are those time-bound tasks, and what are your Focus 3? If you do the challenge, I would love to hear about it. You can message me on Instagram at About Progress or email me at hello@aboutprogress.com. This show is listener supported. Members of the Supporters Club get access to more content and more time with me, both virtually and in person. My favorite benefit is more personal, our private premium, always ad-free podcast where I lean into the personal side of personal development. In January, each Friday, we are sharing a shortened preview of the more personal content, and as part of that, inviting you to take advantage of your first month being free. You can sign up as a supporter at the Bestie or Ride or Die level with your first month free using the code FREEMONTH if you sign up by February 1st, and when you do that, you get access to more personal. Go to aboutprogress.com/support and use the code FREEMONTH at checkout. Thank you so much for listening. Now go and do something with what you learned today. And it's oh gosh, hold on. I had a thought and I just lost it, but it's going to come back in just a second. Oh, okay. It came back. Yay!